Hello, everybody in YouTube land. It is Road to Recovery, and we're once again doing another episode. Anyone who's been following my Twitter handle knows that I've been talking about. I had this concept of doing basically a video that was going to talk about all of my crazy porn stories. And after writing and writing and writing, I got to 6+ pages of single lined storytelling, and I wasn't even close to being done. So what I realized is I wasn't going to be able to make one video about this. It's going to have to be broken up into several videos. So I think that's good though. Now, why am I doing this? Well, it goes a little something like this. Um, if you want to confront your addiction, it's easier to confront your addiction by actually looking at the history of all the things you've ever done and then saying those things out loud. That's what we do in recovery circles. If you go to a 12-step meeting and you get a sponsor, you're encouraged as part of the step process to kind of start talking to your sponsee about some of the messed up things you did. And what this does is it does two things. It gets you a little bit more comfortable with talking with other people, but it also gets you to confront your addiction. So during my process, I did it in bits and pieces. I went through a very thick 12-step book. But this was something a little different because sometimes when you're going through the 12-step program, you just don't have the time to sit down and do every single story, right? Especially when it comes to porn addiction. And this was a deep dive directly into all the humiliating stories I ever did. Mark Twain once noted that if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything, right? What a great comment that is. My sponsor has a saying. He likes to tell me, the truth will piss you off, but it'll also set you free. The truth will piss you off and it'll set you free, and that's true too. So what I'm hoping to do is I'm going to parse this video series out, and this is all going to be me telling my messed up porn stories. And I would like you to just listen to them. And I hope that these stories give you the courage to tell your own stories. Find a partner, find a recovery buddy, go to a 12-step meeting if you can, but if you can't, that's fine. Maybe even go to the NoFap forums and just type it out there. But tell your story. Tell your stories, the humiliating ones, the things that you should be embarrassed about. Maybe you are embarrassed about them, but maybe you're not embarrassed about them. Maybe it's something you should be confronting. All right, so here it goes. Long ago, before the internet was a household utility, there once existed a time when horny men masturbated at images in magazines. These are the tales of one such individual, a young man whose desires to acquire pornography had gone to such extreme lengths that he broke into businesses, scrounged through garbage, and suffered repeated acts of humiliation while collecting his hoard. Listen, fellow perverts, to the tales of an addict's woe. I lived in a very small town, the type of town where people either knew you or knew somebody you were related to. My father, a well-known businessman, was the type of person everybody knew by his first name. He was also the type of dad who kept a huge stash of porn in his house. God bless America. I won't detail too much information about my dad here, as I've already done that in a prior video, but feel free to check that out on my channel. My dad was the gateway enabler to my addiction, as I could always find plenty of nakedness and varieties of stashes around his house. He was also the person that helped me start my own stash, thanks to his frequent disposal and my frequent retrieval of his magazines from the trash. But that's a boring story. No, let me tell you all the messed up things and all the perversity that I specifically got into. So we'll call this story 1. My porn collection grew through my teen years as I began trading with my fellow perverts in school. But the main source of the expansion began through roadside finds. My town had a lot of undeveloped land where roads were built going nowhere in a misguided theory that if you build it, they will come. I would usually take my bicycle down these roads with a fishing pole in hand, trying to fish various waterways that ran along them. Doing this, I would occasionally find discarded magazines along the roadside. Yes, it was porn manna from heaven. I guess the former owners decided that chucking porn into dead end streets was better than the indignity of getting caught throwing it out. I would occasionally find mass hordes of porn. Unfortunately, I usually found it after it got rained on, meaning that the nice clean folds of paper now resembled a mangled accordion. But when you're a teenage boy and have a perpetual boner, standards for new porn are not really a strict thing. Eventually, my young brain started problem solving this porn supply issue. If so many folks, like my dad, are throwing out porn, then where does a good source of porn come from, other than these roadside finds? The answer was garbage trucks. Guys drive around these things, so I rationalized that garbage men likely had a killer stash in their truck. And as I lived just blocks away from where those trucks were parked, I rationalized that an exploration of said trucks might be in order. One night, I committed myself to an expedition. I waited till my parents fell asleep and pushed the screen out of my window. I then crawled out and headed to the area that housed the trucks. It shared the same ground as the town's water treatment facility and was enclosed in a barbed wire fence. The fence ran continuously for nearly 100 yards, where a terminating pole on one side met with a terminating pole from another side. Now, when the fence was first built, the poles are very close together. I mean, a gnat could not fit through them. But after decades since its construction, the ground beneath the poles had started to shift, and there was like a visible gap between the poles. I could push on the poles and discover that there was sufficient enough give, and I could move it from about 4 to 5 inches from one direction to another. I pushed so hard that eventually that there was enough space that I could actually wedge my body completely through if I went in sideways. The trucks were on the other side of the fence. I was nervous, but after staying in one place for some time, I could tell no one was hanging out in this place after work. I pushed through the fence and walked up to the first truck. The door was unlocked. When I opened it, I was shocked. I didn't expect it to be this easy. There were literally stacks of porn on the passenger side. As I looked some more, I found porn underneath the seats and behind the seats. I checked under the truck's seats, and every single one of them had pornography. I checked some of the other trucks, opening their doors. Theirs were all open as well. Again, porn manna from heaven. Porn was everywhere in these garbage trucks. I suspected that breaking into the trucks was going to be a concern for these folks. Unfortunately, not all the trucks had similar stashes, but I had found enough to make this thing a strategy. Taking all this might end the access to supply, as I might get caught. So rather than taking all of them, I would just take a few at a time. I kept repeating this process month after month. Each time occasionally going back, no one would be wiser to my leeching ways. And it worked. Yeah, I had that operation going for years. Free porn whenever I wanted it. Then one night, I started wondering about the offices next to the trucks. They had no deadbolts, and I couldn't see any alarm system. I suspected these offices were used by the waste management team and the mechanics, so they probably had some porn too. I broke out my pocket knife and jimmied the door, trying not to damage the frame or scratch the handle. It popped open, and after a few seconds, I was able to get in. Most of the offices were loaded with maps and paperwork, but when I found the restrooms, I had located the largest stack of porn magazines I had ever seen. On the floor was this stack of porn all the way up to my knees. Again, I did the same thing I did with the trucks. Took a few and left the rest. One night, I was going back to the trucks like I normally do. At that point, it was a routine I was so comfortable with, I was literally not even thinking about what I was doing. It was like second nature. I pushed through the fence, walked up to the truck, and just as I was about to open the door, the whole parking lot area filled up with light. You have to keep in mind, this was in the middle of the night when I was doing it. In the distance, someone who had stealthily parked near the water treatment facility had turned on their high beams. Caught! I felt my heart jump through my throat. The vehicle was some 200 yards away. I thought about my escape. The fence was close, but getting through that gap just in time, I knew I would be caught. On the other side of the property was a large canal, so without a second thought, I ran towards the canal at a sprinter's pace. The truck immediately followed. But to my surprise, he wasn't going very fast. As I cleared the office buildings, I knew for a brief period of time that my pursuers couldn't see me as I was beyond their line of sight. I contemplated hiding in the trucking service depot area where they would normally service the trucks, but I had no idea if these people would be there and if they would follow me or if they would call the police. So I just did the smart thing and took a V line right towards the canal. As I approached the bank of the canal, I jumped behind it as it was a good 8-foot slope before I hit the water. Peeking back to see what was going on, I noticed that the truck was pulling up slowly. It appeared to be a white utility truck, and there were two heads visible from the inside. The truck turned in my direction, and the high beams lit the field like a nighttime football game. At that point, I didn't want to risk it. I turned and took the plunge into the canal and swam across. When I got to the other side, I climbed up the bank and saw the truck still approaching the embankment. I ran to the adjacent woods, knowing I just dodged something awful. I couldn't imagine explaining this to my parents. That would be my last time visiting the garbage trucks. All right, that's story one, guys. That's just story one. I got a lot of stories to tell, so this is going to be one. This one's particularly long, but you know, you would think, even as I'm telling that story, I'm kind of laughing, but there's a little tinge of anxiety still in my mind about that. About why did I think that breaking and entering was going to be a smart and intelligent thing? And the answer is that I wasn't thinking. I just wanted to get off, right? So, is that wise or intelligent? Hell no, it's not. So, I'm thankful that you tuned in. And if you have any crazy stories, put them in the comments below. You can also follow me on my Twitter account, and you can throw your crazy story up there. Again, I think this is therapeutic. By having the courage to tell your story, you're going to, find the courage within yourself to look honestly at your addiction. So thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for the next one. I don't know when I'll have it up, but we're going to keep this series going. Take care.